Hello, all you freedom-loving people. After remarks from Zelensky not recognizing Russian occupation of Crimea, tensions rose regarding the peace talks. So, will Powell be fired from the Fed and will Musk be leaving Doge? Okay, let's get into it. Officials from Ukraine, the United States, and Europe met in London today to discuss a series of truce proposals that were recently put forward by the United States. But Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff will not participate in the meeting. A State Department spokesperson said that Secretary of State Rubio's absence from the meeting was due to logistical issues. This is because the Secretary is super busy, and he did not mean that the meeting was unimportant. The meeting was thus downgraded, and close to the media, top diplomats of the United States, Ukraine, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom have postponed the meeting and downgraded it to discussions among their senior officials. The UK Foreign Office indicated that ministerial level meetings would be replaced by discussions at an official level. Rubio said in a post on X that he had a productive conversation with British Foreign Secretary David Lammy, who is hosting Wednesday's meeting, and that he looks forward to follow up with the United Kingdom and Ukraine at a later point. And Witkoff will visit Moscow later this week. This was revealed by President Putin's diplomatic advisor. Representing the U.S. at the London conference is President Trump's special representative for Ukraine and Russia, retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. At a meeting in Paris last week, officials from the U.S., the UK, France, and Germany discussed the U.S. ceasefire framework. The proposal includes recognizing Russia's control of Crimea. It would also put a ceasefire in place along the front lines of the war. The proposal also included a guarantee that Ukraine would never join NATO. Last week, we discussed the real cause of the Russian-Ukraine war. If we look at it without emotion, these two clauses are reasonable and sensible, and they are indeed prerequisites for a truce. After the U.S. put forward this proposal, President Putin on Monday gave the first public signal that Moscow is willing to start direct talks with Ukraine to find a peaceful solution to end the war. Later, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov further elaborated that Putin's remarks showed that he is willing to have a direct conversation with Ukrainian representatives. However, Ukrainian President Zelensky made it clear on Tuesday that Ukraine will never recognize Russia's claim to Crimea. He told reporters Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There is nothing to talk about. It is against our constitution. This could be the biggest obstacle to a ceasefire agreement. Zelensky stated he has not yet received a definitive peace plan from the Trump administration, but he emphasized that he would be willing to have a direct conversation with Putin once a ceasefire is confirmed. President Trump responded to Zelensky and posted on True Social, "Nobody is asking Zelensky to recognize Crimea as Russian territory, but if he wants Crimea, why didn't they fight for it 11 years ago when it was handed over to Russia without a shot being fired?" It's inflammatory statements like Zelensky's that make it so difficult to settle this war. He has nothing to boast about. The situation for Ukraine is dire. He can have peace, or he can fight for another 3 years before losing the whole country. Vice President J.D. Vance also issued an ultimatum saying that the United States will walk away from talks if Russia and Ukraine reject an explicit proposal by U.S. officials to end the 3-year war. Some European countries are trying to bridge the gap between U.S. and Ukrainian positions on officially recognizing Russia's possession of territories in the occupied zone. According to the Wall Street Journal, the British judges are inclined to accept the proposal of freezing the status quo in exchange for security guarantees and economic assistance. However, the two countries prefer to reach an agreement similar to the Korean War Armistice Agreement, which recognizes the status quo only in fact rather than legally recognizing the Russian-occupied areas. The relationship between President Trump and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell is not looking too good these days. In the 2 meetings since President Trump returned to the White House, the Fed has not adjusted interest rates. President Trump has been trying to stimulate the economy and the stock market with low interest rates. On April 17th, President Trump said that Powell's termination cannot come fast enough. Just one day earlier, President Trump called Powell Mr. Too Late. Then, on Monday morning, in a post on Truth Social, President Trump called Powell a major loser, and again called for a precautionary interest rate cut. Currently, the Fed maintains an interest rate range of 4.25% to 4.5%. Powell was appointed by President Trump in 2017, but they have bickered over the years because they have different philosophies. President Trump always has the economic interests of the United States as his primary goal. He emphasized that the government should take the initiative in guiding financial policies to serve the actual economy and its people. The Fed should work with the government's overall strategy to ensure that financial policy serves the people rather than adhering to dogma. But Powell emphasized the Fed's independence of the government. The Fed's decision should be emphasized based on a professional, non-political stance. According to Business Insider's compilation, there have been 6 key exchanges between President Trump and Powell. Back in April of 2019, President Trump pointed out that Fed policies were depressing the stock market, and he emphasized that cutting interest rates would help the economy take off further. 2 months later, President Trump publicly stated that he had appointed Powell. The media took this as a reminder that Powell should actively cooperate with the administration's policies. In March of 2020, President Trump emphasized the president's responsibility to ensure the smooth implementation of economic policies, and he offered the option of removing Powell in order to demonstrate a decisive leadership style. And then came last year's campaign. In October of 2024, President Trump, in a campaign speech, called for no ambiguity in the Fed's decision-making and for greater policy transparency and efficiency. In December of 2024, President Trump noted that if Powell was willing to resign, it would create more room for policy adjustments. President Trump told reporters several days ago that he could remove the Fed chair real fast if he wanted to. Media reports say that White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett has hinted that the administration is actively evaluating whether there are legal grounds to remove him. But Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent wants President Trump to calm down. Bessent has repeatedly warned White House officials that forcing Powell's removal could cause market turmoil. However, on Tuesday, President Trump stated that he never intended to fire Powell when he was asked in the White House Oval Office if he was going to replace him.
No intention of firing Jerome Powell, because your economic advisor Kevin Hassett a few days ago said that you and people in the White House were studying this idea of possibly doing that before his term ends. No. Do you have any plans on doing that?
None whatsoever. Never did. The press runs away with things. No, I have no intention of firing him. I would like to see him be a little more active in terms of his idea to lower interest rates. This is a perfect time to lower interest rates. If he doesn't, is it the end? No, it's not. But it would be good timing. It could have taken place earlier. But no, I have no intention to fire him.
This statement immediately injected a stabilizer into the turbulent market. The 3 major U.S. stock indexes surged by more than 2%, with the Dow Jones jumping more than 1,000 points, and with global stock markets rebounding in response. Of course, his criticism of Powell and the interest rate policy didn't stop there. After President Trump's speech, the market's expectation for Fed rate cuts were slightly revised. Interest rate futures traders are now predicting 3 25 basis point rate cuts before the end of the year, down from the 4 cuts originally expected. Elon Musk said that he would spend more time at Tesla and less time in Washington, D.C. next month. Musk told investors on the company's earnings call, "Starting early next month in May, my time allocation to Doge will drop significantly." The Tesla financial statements that were released yesterday aren't looking too good. Tesla's operating profit for January to March was $399 million, which is down 66% from the same period last year. This is the biggest drop in quarterly profits since the company launched its best-selling Model Y in 2020. It's also the lowest level in about 5 years. Meanwhile, sales were down 9% from the same period last year. This is the first time in a year that the company has seen both sales and profits fall. However, Musk pointed out that the work of Doge is necessary. He said, "I think the right thing to do is fight the waste and fraud and try to get the country back on the right track. If the ship of America goes down, Tesla will go down with it." He added that he expects to continue working with the government 1 or 2 days a week for the remainder of the Trump presidency in order to make sure that the waste and fraud that we put a stop to doesn't come back. But Musk himself will be rededicating more of his time and energy to Tesla. The stock market immediately reacted positively. Tesla stocks rose 7% early on Wednesday after Musk's announcement. While Tesla faces less tariff risk than most other automakers, the company said that it will have to revisit its guidelines because of the current trade dispute. Musk did not specifically blame President Trump for the uncertainty about trade policy, although he would prefer lower tariffs. Musk said, "The tariff decision is entirely up to the President of the United States. I will weigh in with my advice. I've been on the record many times saying lower tariffs are a good idea for prosperity. I'll continue to advocate for lower tariffs rather than higher tariffs. That's all I can do." Musk also dismissed a question about brand damage to Tesla. He blamed any drop in sales to overall economic weakness and to consumer uncertainty. He said, absent from macro's issues, we don't see any reduction in demand. Musk remains confident about Tesla's long-term prospects. He said, "The future of Tesla is brighter than ever," and Musk added that Tesla's problems are not nearly as serious as they had been in the past. He promised that there is a happy future. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the FDA Administrator Marty Makary held a press conference announcing the phase-out of petroleum-based synthetic food dyes. As we mentioned yesterday, a first step is that the government will ban 2 synthetic colors, citrus red 2 and orange B, which are currently used to color hot dogs and sausages. They will then work with businesses to phase out the other dyes by 2026. Health advocates have long called for the removal of artificial dyes from food. Studies have shown that these dyes may cause neurological problems for children, including symptoms such as hyperactivity and poor concentration. In the United States, artificial dyes are widely used in food products. In contrast, in Canada and Europe, artificial colors require warning labels, so manufacturers have mostly switched to natural alternatives. Health advocates argue that artificial dyes pose health risks and serve no purpose other than to enhance the appearance of food. Dr. Mark Hyman, a health advocate and the founder of Function Health, also spoke in support of the initiative. Hyman said, "No parent should have to guess whether the food they're giving their child contains substances banned in Europe, allowed here. No doctor should watch their patients struggle with chronic illness tied to ultra-processed food and be powerless to change it because our food policies are decades behind the science." Another health advocate is Vani Hari, who is an American author, activist, and affiliate marketer who criticized the food industry for decades. Yesterday in the same conference, Hari praised RFK Jr. for hearing her voice. In an interview on the same day, she also mentioned the recent Arizona bill that banned ultra-processed foods in schools as part of the Make America Healthy Again movement.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. Thank you, Secretary Kennedy, and everyone here at HHS that has made this swift action possible. Today marks the beginning of restoring the trust at the FDA and our regulatory institutions. Last September, I testified at the U.S. Senate about the blatant hypocrisy of American food companies selling safer products in other countries while selling inferior versions of the same exact products here in the United States with artificial food dyes made from petroleum. The outrage of American companies doing this spawned a massive grassroots movement to hold these companies accountable. 1,000 concerned citizens, moms, children, elected officials, health leaders from across the nation gathered in Battle Creek, Michigan last fall asking Kellogg's to remove the dyes they don't use in other countries. We had over 400,000 petition signatures to deliver to their headquarters, but they gave us the cold shoulder. They told us to get off their lawn. Secretary Kennedy took our unheard voices to the campaign trail and elevated them all the way up to President Trump.
This has been the case with several chemicals that were banned as part of that Arizona school bill, specifically titanium dioxide, which is now banned in all of Europe because it can cause DNA damage, but we still allow it here in the United States. This is something that can be in Skittles and icing and all kinds of products that are served in schools. And Arizona was the first state to actually say, you know what? Titanium dioxide should not be in our schools. This is an ingredient that can harm kids, and we have to get it out. And this is the kind of leadership that Secretary Kennedy is spearheading across the nation through these state efforts in Indiana and Arizona and Arkansas, looking at removing soda from the SNAP bill, saying that sugar water, high fructose corn syrup that's artificially dyed should not be a viable product that you use with nutritional dollars, that we should be actually promoting more real foods, fruits and vegetables as part of that program. And we should remove these things that are contributing to the obesity epidemic.
Yesterday, the International Dairy Foods Association also unveiled a voluntary pledge saying that dairy companies vowed to remove certified artificial dyes from products that are sold to schools. The pledge, which was signed by numerous companies, said that businesses selling food to schools for national school lunch and breakfast programs will stop adding artificial dyes to the products by July 2026 or at the start of the 2026-2027 school year. Currently, the FDA permits 36 food color additives, including 8 synthetic dyes, and many are made from petroleum. The move on Tuesday marks a major step forward in the administration's efforts to make America healthy again. However, food manufacturers have criticized the move as unfair because these strictly regulated artificial dyes have long been certified as safe. On Tuesday, 3 federal prosecutors who worked on the case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams resigned. The 3 lawyers were part of a group in the Justice Department that refused to dismiss the case against Mayor Adams in February. They were placed on administrative leave last month as an investigation played out. Instead of agreeing to preconditions on them returning to the office, the lawyers sent a letter to Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Andrew Roback, Cecilia Cohen, and Derek Wickstrom wrote to Blanche saying, "It is now clear that one of the preconditions you have placed on our return to the office is that we must express regret and admit some wrongdoing by the office in connection with the refusal to move to dismiss the case. We will not confess wrongdoing when there was none." The fallout began in mid-February when Daniel Sassoon, who was then acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, resigned from her position on February 13th. 5 other DOJ officials have since joined Sassoon in resigning from office. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember that every like, comment, and share helps more people to see the truth. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And if you have already subscribed, we thank you. But please double check to make sure that you're still subscribed, because some of our audience have reported that they're somehow unsubscribed without their knowledge. We've also heard that many of you don't get notifications of our videos anymore on YouTube. So when you do subscribe on YouTube, please make sure to tap the notification bell as well. Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard today, please don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth.